Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Washington Lee University School of Law. My name is Madeline Morcell, and it is my honor as co-president of the Women Law Students Organization to welcome you all to the first annual Women's Law Organization, Lara Women in the Law Symposium. Women have come a long way. You see it when you look around this room. 30 years ago, I'm sure many of the women in this room could tell you it was a different story, and they will tell you today. In 1975, the first class of women law students graduated from Washington Lee University. Many of their male counterparts questioned whether they would go on to use their degrees at all, and if they did, how they could justify taking jobs away from men. We are here today to celebrate the achievements of the women who excelled in that environment, the culmination of the unique challenges they faced, the adversity they overcame, and the glass ceiling they shattered. On a larger scale, we are also doing what the Women's Law Students Organization has always done. We are celebrating how diversity enriches our profession. Today, women lawyers work as respected equity partners, members of Congress, law school deans, and justices on the U.S. Supreme Court. They run their own law firms, and they run for U.S. president. They even have their own t-shirts. Women have progressed because they have fought hard for a seat at the table. Yet disparities in pay and barriers to advancement still persist. If we want this to change, we need to realize that progress is not one woman's ability to beat the odds, leaving the next woman to face the same barriers on her own. It's about building a ladder to help the next woman do the same. It's about changing the odds. This ethos is at the heart of WILSA's mission. It is also at the heart of this first Lara Women in the Law Symposium. The first panel, comprised of alumni representing the last 4 decades and the only 4 decades of women law graduates at this university, will address the advancement of women in the profession. The second panel will present opportunities to end still persisting gender disparities. We hope that in years to come, the symposium will continue to enrich discourse and around topics relating to women, gender equality, and diversity. On behalf of WILSO, I'd like to thank those who helped make this happen. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Judge Rebecca Connelly for her relentless efforts. Thank you, Dean Zentleitner, for fiercely supporting WILSO's efforts since you arrived on campus and for setting an incredible example as the first women law dean of our university. And thank you, Professor Beth Belmont, for your generosity and guidance. You are a force to be reckoned with, and we are all better for it. And of course, thank you to our outstanding moderator and panelists. This symposium is named for Lara Goss. Those who knew Lara know that no words could do her passion, brilliance, and countless marks she left on this community justice. At this time, I invite Judge Rebecca Connelly up to introduce Lara to the rest of you. Thank you, Judge Connelly.
Thank you, Maddie. Thank you. I also want to talk about this event, which of course is you can't do without talking about Lara. But thank you all. Thank you for coming. This is quite impressive. Many of you had to travel quite a distance to be here, and I'm so pleased that you're here. Thank you, Juvenile, and thank you, WLSO, the Women Law Student Association. This group of women law students has done a fabulous job putting this together today, and all under the leadership and guidance, tireless efforts of Maddie himself. Maddie, you've done a terrific job, and thank you so much. And today, when I see this group, I mean, this is This is pretty awesome. This is the collective talent in this room right now is just amazing. And I am honored. I am thrilled. I am so inspired. It's just fantastic. It is. It was about 18 months before today, fall of 2013, chatting in my conference room with my Juvenile third-year law extern. And we're talking about, wouldn't it be great if we had a gathering of women lawyers? Women lawyers from professional organizations, the legal professional organizations, and get the different professional organizations together in one gathering. And wouldn't it be great? Well, wouldn't it be really great if we did it in the western part of Virginia, where so many of the women who practice law don't even know about the professional legal organizations that are here for women. So we could put together a gathering, and it would provide networking and professional development. And my law extern, with her signature smile and her "I can do anything" approach to life, naturally said, why not W&L? And how about the WLSO? We could get WLSO involved, and we can do this. And that's how it started. And with Lara Goss, it turned from this idea, wouldn't it be a good idea, to an event. And Lara, with her do the next thing, incredible energy, extremely pleasant, just unbelievable organizational skills, she led us to create this event. And along the way, there were many times when we didn't think it was going to happen. There were just too many obstacles. But Lara was not going to let this event be defeated. She led us through everything, including a horrific winter storm that struck the night before the event was to take place. And this halted all travel in Virginia. Well, at this point, surely this is going to cause this event to be canceled. But within hours, Lara had the event rescheduled. The event was going forward. It was not going to be defeated. She had new advertisements put together, new posters created to advertise our rescheduled event. She collected the posters and was taking the posters to the courthouses in Stanton and the courthouses in Harrisonburg before then coming to my office in Harrisonburg for work. Only she didn't make it to the courthouses in Stanton, and she didn't make it to the courthouses in Harrisonburg, and she didn't make it to my office, because that's the day that Lara was killed. Her car in flames. She was driving on Interstate 81. And as difficult as it was to go forward with the event after that, we did. It was only fitting. We could not let the event be defeated. It was Lara's dreams and Lara's passion, and we knew it had to be realized. And everyone who knows Lara knows that she had lots of dreams and she had lots of passions. And anyone who knows Lara knows that she is going to do it. And her family knows that too. And in that vein, her family is making sure that those dreams and those passions will be realized. They will not be defeated. What her family has done is they have created a foundation to live out Lara's dreams and Lara's passions. And it is the Live Like Lara Foundation, naturally. Today, you'll have two panels and we'll have a reception. And stay for the reception. But at the reception, you can learn more about the Live Like Lara Foundation. You can meet those who are involved with the foundation. You can also come back April 18th. You can come back here and you can meet Lara's family. And you can join the foundation at a wine tasting to learn more about how the foundation is going to live out Lara's dreams and Lara's passions. And many of the topics that we're going to be discussing today are precisely the questions and concerns that Lara and I talked about. And we talked in the privacy of my chambers. It's wonderful to be here and have the opportunity with so many awesome, talented people to share our challenges and how to deal with the various questions and concerns that we have as women professionals and women in the law. Lara's hard work and her passions and her endless energy is what has created the event last year, which was a panel, and that is also what has inspired what we have today, which is a symposium. We're building on this idea and creating some wonderful event that I look forward to participating in the future. So today is the first annual Lara D. Symposium on Women in the Law. It's also another important anniversary, and that is the 40th anniversary of women at Washington School of Law. We have with us today a member of the first class of women at the School of Law, who is now a member of the faculty at the School of Law. Sarah, that we know as Sally. Sally White joined the Juvenile School of Law not only as an assistant law librarian, but also as a law student. She was one of the first women to study at the law school. For many years, Sally was the director of the law library, while rising on the academic ladder from assistant to associate to full professor of law in 1993. But in 2010, Sally stepped away from the library so that she could teach full-time. Sally continues to teach full-time. She's now teaching torts and writing, but her scholarship focuses mostly on copyright law, intellectual property, trademarks, unfair competition, and maritime law. She's in demand as a speaker on the intersection between copyright law and libraries. Sally's been called on to testify regarding proposed changes to copyright law. In addition to her JD, Sally holds a bachelor's degree from Western State Colorado University in Gunnison and a master's of library science from the University of North Texas in Denton. It's my honor to introduce Sally White. Professor White.
I don't even know where to begin after that gracious introduction, but thank you. And welcome to you all. It's such a pleasure. It really is remarkable to see this many women in the law school. And I'm very privileged and honored to be invited to be the moderator. And I will chime in at varying times throughout our conversation. But right now I would like to invite the members of the first panel, where we make a historical tour through our challenges and our successes in the first 40 years of women in the law school. So may I invite you all to join me. And while they are coming, take a couple of notes. We're going to tackle the decades, starting with the first of the decades. And so let me introduce you first to Judge Harriet Dorsey, who was in the second class of women law students, who doubled our numbers. In 1973, she came and during her time here, she wrote for the Law Review. She was instrumental in founding the Women Law Student Organization. So hats off to you that we're celebrating all of this. She also received a letter of commendation from then Professor Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was the student director of the Alderson program. Alderson was a clinic. The students in the Alderson program handled the legal questions of the women federal prisoners at Alderson. After a very long association with them, we closed that down and began the Black Law Clinic, so the predecessor to Black Law. After graduation, Judge Dorsey moved with her husband to Blacksburg, where she had a general practice of law for 30 years. managed to practice law and be the mother of 3 children, some of whom, at least one of whom I knew in law school. After retirement from the practice of law, she was given an interim appointment to the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court, and she's remained a full-time judge for 3 years. And now she serves as a substitute judge. So, welcome, Harriet. To her left, representing the decades of the 80s, is Judge Mary Johnston, appointed to the Superior Court of Delaware in 2003. She, too, served on the Law Review and was lead articles editor. She, I can remember this from school, when you actually played a concert for us. Concert pianist. How one manages to do that.
That's a little overstated.
Let me assure you, it was not. It was not. Among her many talents. Before coming to the bench, she served as chief counsel of the Delaware Supreme Court's Office of Disciplinary Counsel. You can imagine what a fun job that is. She prosecuted attorney discipline cases and unauthorized practice of law. She, before that, was a partner with Morris James, practicing primarily corporate and commercial litigation. She currently is assigned as a member of the court's complex commercial litigation division. She's the past chair of the Delaware State Bar Association's Women and Law section. She's a recipient of the Bar Association's Women's Leadership Award. Is a member of the Pro Se Litigation Assistant Committee. A member of the Delaware Supreme Court Permanent Advisory Committee on Delaware Lawyers' Rules of Professional Conduct and Professional Committee. She is a member of the Inn of Court. She, in her past service, has served on the Judicial Ethics Advisory Committee and was the liaison to the Executive Committee of the Delaware State Bar. She's a member of the former member of the W&L Law Council, so it's been much service for there. And actually, she's also the mother of a third-year law student and is married to a W&L alumnus. Welcome, glad to have you with us. We'll be looking forward to putting next is Monica Johnston, 1993. We're now up to the 90s. Graduate of Washington County School in private practice, beginning at Brown, Todd, and Haber in Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville. A place we faculty try to encourage people to apply to firms. Great firms, great place to start, and they're crying out, and somehow we can't seem to get that message across. Now that I said that, she left it. And she's been for 10 years with Jackson Kelly in Charleston, West Virginia, and I didn't know that she was also practicing in intellectual property. I should have known that. So she's now a partner with Dinsmore and Scholl, which is a large Cincinnati law firm in Charleston. She has 2 sons, 2 teenagers. Quite challenging. Actively involved in their schools as well as numerous nonprofit organizations. And then we have Jennifer Dean, who hails from Northern California. Boy, that's a long trip from Northern California to West Virginia. I thought it was a long trip from Colorado via Texas to Virginia. She served as the vice chair of the Moot Court Executive Board and vice president of the Latin American Law Students Association. Graduated in 2012 and practiced immigration law with a small women's firm in Salem, Virginia, before opening her own immigration practice. Kudos to you, a practice that's so needed in this valley. So, I know you want to hear from them, and so I'm going to turn the mic over, and we will just work through the decades, beginning with Harriet. I think they were envisioning that. Oh, may I say one thing? I'm going to try to keep us on time, and just like the Academy Awards, if they get too close, I might stop. So if I hear a note.
I've been so impressed with the women law students I have met this year and also a couple of prior years when I've been here for different events. It seems like you are so much more advanced than we were at that time, or that I was at that time. You've done a great job with this. I've been asked to speak on a series of 3 questions. And one of the questions is, how was my time here at Washington Lee affected by my gender? I was in the 2nd class of women. I am from the Midwest. I'm not from here, so I actually didn't really know much about Washington Lee. My husband kept saying, well, it's a men's school. And I kept writing letters saying, you take women. And every time I wrote a letter, I got back a catalog. No letter, just a catalog. And I thought, the answer must be in here somewhere. And I went through every page. I saw no women, no laws, no pictures of women, no nothing. So finally, after the 3rd catalog, I just sent in my application. And they took me, and I just came. So once here, I have to tell you that I did not ever feel that I was not welcome here. Whatever battles may have been fought before I got here were over by that time. Well, except for a few things, like we didn't have a bathroom. We were in the old building on the front colonnade, and there was no women's bathroom. There was a faculty bathroom, which had been relabeled women's, that had all the inappropriate facilities in it. But it was ours. And but Dean Steinheimer was very supportive, and actually, looking back now, I realize very patient with me, because I was usually making trouble about something. And as Sally said, it started with the swimming pool, because of course the undergrad was still single sex, and there was only one set of facilities. And there was a swimming pool down in the basement of the whatever building that was, the gym.
Water gym.
Yeah, and it was the one that was open all day, all night. And that's the one I wanted to swim in because I was busy. Well, it turns out that was the bare naked swimming pool. And so they did not want to open it to women. And I'm sure Dean Steinheimer was very much behind the scenes, rolled his eyes and got it open to women because we made it. So things like that happened. But I felt actually special here. I knew that the faculty wanted me to succeed and the other women to succeed. I never had any problem. And unfortunately, it wasn't very good training for the future, but it was nice while it lasted. I don't think you would have no reason to know that in 1973, the law in the area of women's rights or gender discrimination was almost non-existent. Title VII had been passed, the Equal Pay Act had been passed before that, but there was and there were very little law, very little constitutional law, mostly Title VII. And people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was at that time an academic, were very instrumental in strategizing how to get these issues before the courts and picking the cases that would go forward. And I don't know if any of you have seen, I've forgotten the name, Selma. Did you see Selma? And I'm sure you observed in that movie how the major players were strategizing how to advance the legal issues and how to choose the cases that would work for them. And that's what was happening with women's issues in those days. And plus I was kind of a troublemaker anyway. So we started the Women's Law Student Organization with much debate. Am I right, Sally?
Yes.
Much debate over whether we wanted to separate ourselves or not separate ourselves. Same kind of conversation that happened for, the two black law students we had. And we were not very diverse at that point. And one of the first things we did is we invited Sarah Weddington to come and speak here. And she was the attorney who represented Roe and Roe versus Wade. A really amazing woman, and she has remained a friend. So I think WSO, even in the beginning days, brought something new to law school. We were all very close. There were only 70 people in our class, so I think we all felt like we were brothers and sisters. We stayed in touch. But when I graduated, I actually couldn't get a job, and I was a good student, and I could not even get interviews most places. A couple of examples, the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office in the city of Roanoke, and I don't remember who that was in 1976. I think I'll remember that all, I guess. But he said, why would we hire a woman? And that was that. That was the end. A friend of mine, who was a graduate of the University of Michigan Law School at Phi Beta Kappa, moved to Blacksburg because her husband had started a position at the university. And one of the lawyers that was helping her find a job said, gosh, I really wish I could hire you, but I've already got a legal secretary. So that's kind of where we were. And so she and I went into practice together. I mean, what else could we do? And we did great. We did fine. In fact, we got a lot of attention. We were, the fact that we could like walk and chew gum at the same time seemed like a miracle. Really, you're so smart. And we were pretty aggressive about getting our fair share of business. I think when any new lawyer starts in a new environment, a new firm, or in town, you kind of got to get your elbows out there, or nobody's going to make room for you. And I think that was especially true for women. We were not taken seriously at all by our male colleagues. Lawyer girls was one of the nicer things they called us, lawyer girls. And, we weren't supporting our families, which actually I was. I was supporting a husband in graduate school and a son at that point. And, and then lately I heard, this is 30 years later, they thought that my partner and I were probably lesbians. She was married and I was married, but, whatever. Must be lesbians. I think one of the most telling moments, and I'm telling you, this was not that long ago, there was a woman in our bar who really was probably not mentally stable and extremely disagreeable and annoying. She did not come from Washington Lake. And one day, one of the male lawyers was ranting about her, about all the things that she did to annoy him, which were the same things she did to annoy me. But he got the point, he was sort of spitting almost. He said, on top of everything else, she's not even feminine. He did. And that's a problem. And that was a problem for me. It's hard to be a good Southern woman when you're a Yankee. and when you're trying to be a good lawyer. And I know you've all seen these things. And I actually should have been a judge about 15 years ago, honestly. But it just wasn't going to happen. I didn't play basketball. I was the first woman to ever practice law in that part of the state. I didn't know that until I got there. But it took my whole generation before these doors started opening. My appointment to the bench was kind of through the back door, and I'm glad I have been able to do it. And I can't tell you how many of my colleagues have come up to me and said, gosh, I hear you're a really good judge. And maybe you should have been, and I thought, well, what did you say? What did you think? So there are still challenges, but the world has changed a lot. Just having all of you here changes things a lot, and having all of you out there in the world changes things a lot. And I think you can expect, and you probably will, be treated like everybody else, and you can be prepared to work very, very hard, and you can be prepared to be very challenged, and you can have babies, too. And don't wait. There's not. I told one of the young women in my court the other day, she's been married a while, and I said, listen, there's no good time to have a baby. Just go ahead. And she did. So thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very glad to be back. I'm very glad to meet all of you.
I'd like to begin by telling you how honored I am to be part of this symposium today, and there's a comment here. I'd like to thank you for those wonderful remarks about Lara, and I have to say in front of all these people, she thought the world of you and was very inspired by you and felt that you were a wonderful mentor to her. So, and that was probably one of the things I was going to end with, but that's what we all have to do, is reach back and remember the people who mentored us and make sure that we mentor other people. Well, I entered Juvenile law in 1981 in the fall. At that time, there were about 25% of the class was women, and of course there were still no men on the undergraduate campus until the fall after I graduated. I have to say, though, that uniformly, I did not feel that my gender was any impediment. And I have to give this man, Dean Steinheimer, who will always be the dean to me. I'm sorry to be that like he will always be the dean. But he, I think, set the standard. He really was able to make sure that the culture was one that was friendly to diversity. And I didn't have Professor Calhoun for a class, but he was one of those professors. You were wet behind the ears then too, and my perception was that professors really didn't have a gender bias, that there was really a gender blindness. And we saw diversity at that point throughout law review and moot court and Burke scholars and so on. In fact, Professor Groot approached me to write a law review article on a double jeopardy theory that he was working on, which of course I did. But I don't think I ever really understood his theory. I just sort of wrote it. He looked at it and it got published and all that was great. But anyway, he's one of my other wonderful mentors. Now, the undergraduate campus at that time was another story. It was still men, but they knew women were coming in that fall. It was a big controversy. There were bumper stickers on cars that said, "Women in the hay, not all day. Better dead than co-ed." And this is at a time when the rest of the world is pretty much, we understand that institutions of higher learning are going to be coeducational. When I was inducted into ODK, I was the only woman in ODK because I was the only law school woman there, and there were no undergraduate women. And the undergraduate men would not call me Mary. They insisted. By then I was married. It was my third year. They insisted on calling me Mrs. Johnston, and they would not even call me by my first name. And they'd ask me questions like, well, what do you think when we get the women here? We're going to have some female-type courses, home ec. And so that was the atmosphere on the undergraduate campus. Now, that changed quickly for any of you that know the history of the school. That first class of women and the subsequent classes were so outstanding. I think that first class produced the first growth scholar Juvenile had had in decades. I might be wrong on that. It might have been the second class, and now at the undergraduate campus, I think we've had some female friends who have gone there, and I don't think that the issues are gender issues. So then, after I graduated, once again, you leave the nirvana of law school and then go into the job market. And it was better. I got interviews. I mean, they were hiring women, but there was like an unstated quota. So, for example, in my firm, I was not the first woman; I was the second woman. But the reason that they hired the first woman was she'd already had her babies. It was a second career for her, and her husband had a stable job in that community. If I had been a single woman at that time, I do not think my firm would have hired me, because they wanted some assurances that I was going to stay in the community. They didn't want my husband to work for the DuPont company where he might be transferred. They wanted him to work, and he wasn't at a law firm in Wilmington at that time. They wanted somebody that was going to stay there. And I even had one of the partners ask me about having babies in an interview, which even at that time was not appropriate, but we just kind of let it go. He was a nice guy and he didn't know any better. And so anyway, there were still women, and you see it even now, but less and less, there were still women who reached high positions in the profession who loved being the only woman judge, the only woman litigator, the only one this. And they pulled up the ladder and they did not assist other women. And, fortunately there were enough other people who was a pretty small community. Then, to give you an example, when I went to my first women's section of the bar meeting at that time, there were about a dozen women. You knew everybody in the bar. This is in the Wilmington community. And we just had our, I don't know which annual women's section retreat, and there were 200 people there. That's just the people who came to the retreat. So, it's a whole different thing now. Even in the interview process, I had to interview with every single lawyer in that firm. I don't think they wanted to make sure I didn't have 3 heads. The other thing that was going on then is secretaries did not want to work for women. They didn't want to work for why, we don't know, but they didn't want to. So the prevailing attitude is men are assertive, women are bitches. So I always felt like we had to work harder and be more productive just to break even. Now, I did have the first woman to have a baby in the firm. She's sitting up there. And they were very supportive. I was very lucky with that. I had a great firm, great partners. They treated me very well with that. That was not uniformly true throughout the community or throughout the legal profession. But I happened to have a group of partners that were really dedicated. Nevertheless, I cut my maternity leave short with both of my children because I just felt like I couldn't take too much time. And conversely, now men will take time off when their wives have babies. Absolutely, that would have been viewed, and my husband was saying that would have been viewed as, what kind of a wimp are you to take time off? And that was just not going to happen. So it was harder on men then, too. So the practice of law, the clients were, and I think still are to some extent, skeptical of letting women take the lead. Even now they love to have a diverse team, but letting that woman take the lead, that's a little bit different than having her sit second chair or third chair. But again, I had some wonderful partners who convinced clients to give me a chance. And then once you've got a few arguments or a few witnesses under your belt, then they can sell you better. So I was very, very lucky. In fact, I won my first big argument I won. I thought I must really be great. But in hindsight, it was an argument that a potted plant could have done. The chancellor at that time was looking for a case to define Chancery Court jurisdiction, and it just was by luck I happened to have the right facts and was on the right side. So the case got dismissed, went over to federal district court, and then we crashed and burned. So it was not necessarily good. But anyway, that added more responsibility. The same is true today. So here's my theory on mentoring, which I tell everyone, men and women. So right after I joined the firm, about 6 months later, the former chancellor, Grover Brown, joined our firm, and he happened to have an office right next to mine. He was a country boy. I grew up on a farm, so we sort of hit it off, and I would just sort of follow him around like a yappy dog. I remember one time he was working on this big case, Revlon, this big corporate case now. And it was all secret. No one was, they didn't know we were in the litigation. He was going to New York and meeting with people. And I basically just said, can I come too? Can I come? And he said yes. And so I gradually kind of just kept tagging along and kept asking him, can I help you? What can I do? What can I do? And eventually I became his sort of second chair in some of these big cases. And you can make your own destiny by doing that. Pick your mentors. It doesn't have to be one. I mean, if you see somebody in one area, I did this on the court too, when I first joined the bench. The person that I thought was really the sentencing guru, I kind of went to them for things. The person I thought was the med-mal guru, I went to them. So I think you can't sit back and wait for somebody to mentor you and to help you. You have to put yourself out there. And I think people appreciate it. So in the minute that I have left, I'm going to speak about something that may seem to be frivolous, but I think it is representative of changing attitudes. When I started practice, we had to dress like many men. We had to wear dark suits, and I mean suits, not a dress and a jacket, a suit, white starched shirt with a collar and a little silk foulard bow tie. And I'm not kidding. That was the dress code in Delaware for the Supreme Court. You couldn't even get those shirts laundered. They were too small. You had to get them dry cleaned. Anyway, so gradually then what happened was women started to have babies. Well, there weren't any professional maternity clothes. Everything had lace and bows and arrows. So gradually that came back, and then we branched out to silk blouses and pearls, and then I remember the first time I saw a woman in court with a jacket and a leopard collar. I thought, oh, she is going to get thrown out. It didn't happen. Slacks were absolutely verboten until the 90s. Now women wear slacks all the time. And at this point, I've come to a great place in my life where it doesn't really matter what I wear because I wear a robe. I just have to make sure I have great shoes. Thank you.
Before Monica starts speaking, just to interject one thing, when Professor Shaughnessy joined the faculty, she joined us from, she had been an associate with Clary Gottlieb in New York. And I can remember having a discussion, we were on some committee for the university where we were trying to think about how to handle pregnancies of women faculty. And she said, well, her firm had pregnancy leave. It was 2 weeks long. I cannot imagine being in big law and trying to go back to that kind of practice, having been out for 2 weeks with the child. Yeah. Things have changed a bit.
Start out roll 3 months. Roll 6, and many are taking attendance as well. I'm Monica Jensen. I was class of 93 here, and I have a slightly different experience than you all did or continue to have. Partly because of the road that you paved before me. I'm so appreciative of those women, and I'll talk a little bit about them today. I also have a very limited perspective. I've been in private practice with big law firms my entire 22-year career, and in addition, I get swirled away in a little intellectual property department, so I don't have the dynamic speaking abilities that you all do in the courtroom. I sit there and talk about technology all day. And so I'll start there, because I think my story does start a little bit before I got to Washington and Lee. I was an electrical engineer, an engineering undergrad at Lafayette College in Pennsylvania. And Lafayette College, if you're not familiar with it, was an all-male school as well until the mid-'70s. When I was there in the mid-'80s, they had pretty well integrated, although some remnants were still there, which were kind of fun, something about beanie hats and other silly things we can make fun of the boys about. With that said, I didn't have any female professors in engineering. I had all male professors, and only about a quarter of my class were women. I was, again, in electrical, which was less of a woman's area than some others. The professors were great when I was in school, in undergrad. The students, on the other hand, didn't really think I knew what I was talking about. And I went through a little phase, which probably opened my eyes to the fact that I should go to law school and not be continuing an engineering degree, of fighting this. I was not pleased with people saying that my ideas were not worthy of attention, and so I fought back. And it didn't necessarily go over real well. But when I did, I was right. And lab got done, and there was lots of drama in the room at the time. So I never wanted to sit back and do that, and I think that was probably where I was heading in my engineering degree. And so I went to Washington and Lee, got in, by some blessing, and came to Washington and Lee and branched out what I thought was going to be a political career of sorts, maybe become a public defender or some advocate for some underwritten class, and I found myself swooped up with a private law firm approach to recruiting in Washington and Lee, and ended up as patent lawyer, which is kind of all really boring.
Some of us don't.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but we have to sit back in the little back of the room and giggle about even tell you, I think half my class were women. The women that were in my class were the first, some of the women were, or a few, were first 7-year women that had gone through Washington High School. They were the first women who'd gone all the way through undergrad. And so by that time, the undergrad and law school were actually, I think, rather well integrated. I don't know if that had always been the case. But,
No.
well, that probably helped to have women come up through the undergrad and then going on to the law school. So. And I will also say, at that time, I think women were in the top half of the class. I think most of us were in the top half. Maybe I'm wrong. So, it was like the men would either put it all out there and do super, super well, which some women did as well, or they would just party. I didn't see that out of the women, so kudos to us. I think that does actually translate into successful careers. After law school, I went to Brown Todd Hebron, and I was in the first class of pantsuits at Brown Todd Hebron. I wasn't that brave. I can't believe I said that. I was trying. I wasn't that brave, and I've got some good stuff in here. But it took me a few years to get the pantsuit out. I now dress extremely casually because I never see anybody other than my fellow lawyers. I don't recommend that as a young lawyer, especially because you get a lot of respect based on what you look like and how you carry yourself and, good things like that. So I don't recommend that, but I now find myself more and more dressing casually because I can get a lot of work done. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters for me because I don't see clients, I don't see the courtroom. It's just the work product that I put on paper and by email. Okay, so now I need to skip ahead. When I was at Jackson Kelly for 10 years, I had a great career there. I was the only patent lawyer at Jackson Kelly law firm, about 150 lawyers, and there were only 2 or 3 of us in the intellectual property department. And it was hard to progress as the only patent lawyer. You then have to know every nuance of the law and how it changed and how it impacted your clients in every area of science. And at some point I finally realized that I could use a department. And I transitioned over to Dinsmore, which we do have a significant intellectual property department. But there I met the class of the 70s. It was the 70s women who still amaze me. They were so respectful when they broke the barriers. And I think that's why they were successful. And they were hard workers. They're still hard workers. They're now leaders in the firm. They are now managing partners in a lot of firms because of the incredible talents that they had and what they brought to the table. So that was an inspiration to me. And they were also incredibly supportive. And as an aside, just in my own career, I haven't had a lot of issues with men and gender issues, but I've had issues with women who tear down other women. And I'm not one of those women, and I hope none of you all are. But that generation definitely was not. They were putting the hand out and continue to do that for my entire career. Interestingly enough, I also see those women retiring early. I think they kind of got burned out. They kind of done their duty, and some of them found the dream job that we would all have. And isn't going to retire early, of course. Yeah. And the others are in management positions, I would say. They're incredible rainmakers. Some of the top lawyers in my firm are women. The top 10, 5 women. So, and it's that generation that really got it going. And it's not surprising that as Fortune 500 companies are hiring women because they're very good at what they do. As well, women are succeeding equally well, if not better than men, for the same reason. Am I coming close?
We've got another minute. Before I start singing.
Oh, okay. So I have been on a number of women initiative committees, and I've led them, frankly. I was not on WLSO when I was here, and I'm sorry about that.
We'll forgive you.
But I will say that those committees that I've been on, I'm on 2 now, the firm as well as with the Intellectual Property Law Association. Those can be experiences that are not necessarily productive for women. And I'm just going to put it out there. They can be fashion shows or discussions on whether you should wear pantyhose or not. And they can be other discussions about inflection and other weaknesses of women. And I think in some ways that almost furthers any kind of discrimination that may be out there. They can also be very successfully celebrations of what women bring to the table. I sit on the review committee at the firm, and women are typically not a problem. That women work hard. They do what's expected. They bring in good work. They're respectful around clients. They get in the courtroom. They're well prepared. They don't wing it. I mean, women do it, and they do it well. And I think that is what a women's initiative committee should celebrate. I think that it's good that the firms and organizations have those, but that would be, I think you're going to need to do some. Okay, thank you.
It was interesting to hear you talk about, the numbers of women in your class. When women were first admitted to the law school, there was a quota. A quota, yes. There was. It was the Women Law Student Organization after the school moved over here that discovered the quota and threatened to write every admitted student about the fact that there was a quota. And the quota disappeared. But it did take us significantly longer than other law schools to reach 50% enrollment in the class. So we've come.
Sally was the spy in the class. She was student and faculty. Be quiet.
Other stories not to be shared. How about take up more time of this? Okay, cool.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Dean. I'm a graduate of the class of 2012 with the law school here. And as you can already clearly see from the presenters before me, I have benefited from standing on the shoulders of such giants that have made these tremendous inroads of allowing double generals to start their education on the undergrad side, complete their legal education to law school, and also allow us to wear pearls and cheetah print. And so my experience in law school was a very refreshing one. I was drawn to Juvenile because of the faculty-to-student ratio, 19-1 at the time I enrolled. And I think that speaks volumes in terms of your experience here at Juvenile and certainly the women professors that you can benefit from in their teaching. And my experience in law school not only benefited from standing on the shoulders of the women who have come before me, but also my mother hails from El Salvador. And so as a minority here, I appreciate the diversity that I saw when I first enrolled in 2009 with BALSA, LALSA, with WILSO, and that tremendous inroads have been made in a variety of contexts here at the law school. So I find it helpful to focus on maybe my experience postgraduate because there was a difference between being incubated in this wonderful mecca of the law school, having your girlfriends here, having your female professors teach you so well, and then embarking upon the opportunities that made a way to postgraduate. And so for me, I was lucky enough to find a position with a private immigration law firm in Roanoke, rather based in Salem at the time. And this law firm, when I first had joined, would consisted entirely of women, with the exception of one male attorney at the time. We soon remedied that and departed ways to start his own firm in Blacksburg. And so what was left was this utopia of women working together in an office. At the time I joined, I was fortunate enough to have a comrade. She graduated from Liberty Law School my same year. And it was amazing to go through that experience with another woman because there are a lot of trials to learn upon postgraduate. Whether you specialize in an area of law or what you learn in the classroom here takes on a whole new meaning, a whole new context when you first practice at a firm. And so I implore you that if you are lucky enough to work with someone in your generation or someone that is new to the experience that you're just going to find when you graduate from law school, to really bond with that person and go through that experience together. And it's been a tremendous moment for me, and she's one of my closest friends now. So, practicing with her and our senior female partner, Our office manager was a woman, our paralegal was a woman, our front desk receptionist and legal assistants were women, and that environment was so unique. And I would love to see it replicated elsewhere. I think for the purposes of gender discrimination, I can't advocate that. But if you happen to stumble upon such a unique situation, it's really worthwhile. And what I found working in the office entirely of women is that our baseline was incurring a lot of respect from each other, because your legal assistants, your paralegals, and the senior attorneys, and your fellow associates all have a different area of expertise that they really excel in. And so one thing that I benefited greatly from was our intercom system in the office, because we had the ability not to, run to the next office next door, but really just buzz someone and at a moment's notice, just ask them, hey Susie, do you have a minute? I have this pressing question about, filing deadline, or, what's this area of the law again, or do we submit this form with this case? And that's how we operated. It's a little chaotic at times, but the synergy of the firm that we created, and that at a moment's notice we would drop everything to help out anyone else in the office who needed our assistance, was pretty unique and pretty special. Also, I benefited from being part of the Women's Attorney Association that was based in Roanoke. I have the honor of being the current president for the Roanoke chapter of Virginia Women's Attorney Association. And I suggest for anyone who's interested in staying within the state or wherever they may end up, to seek out whether there are similar women organizations. Our chapter in particular focuses on monthly luncheons where we have all our women lawyers get together. We kick off our heels metaphorically, and we're able to find a time and space to just really connect as women attorneys. And we have judges that attend our lunches. We have women, senior partners at law firm, public defender's office, prosecutor's office, government agencies, and to have such an amazing group with such talent come together on a monthly basis is pretty exceptional. So I suggest and encourage everyone to reach out to those groups and make those connections, not only for networking to cultivate a referral base, but to just leave the heels at the door. Have a nice lunch, sit down, and get to know the other attorneys in your area. Because it sounds like 30, 40 years ago, that community may not have existed. So there's so much that we can benefit from today. And then also, at some point, I became a mother. That point was roughly occurred on November 5th, 2014, this past year, at 1:45 in the morning. I was really hoping, I had it in my mind that, my daughter would be born with a nice afternoon time, everything would go smoothly. But as many of the mothers in this room can attest to be familiar with, children are on their own time. So we welcomed our baby girl screaming into the world, and, being a mother added a whole new dimension to also my profession as a working professional and as an attorney. And on top of being a new mother, 3 months after I had her, I had decided to open up my own law firm. So you can imagine, the logistics that are involved in creating a new practice from the ground up while managing and still adjusting to waking up every hour and a half in the middle of the night, which is still happening. If any mothers have advice for me, please let me know in all years. But anyway, I can drill.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I figured a full stomach, maybe a drop of it. So that's good advice. And I think, at the same time, the credit, I can't take all the credit. I think having a partner, my husband has been tremendous support and pillar of of our home system, my professional life. He is attending the Virginia Trials Lawyers Conference at the Greenbrier right now as we speak, although he's not actually attending it. He's back in our hotel room with our 5-month-old daughter, watching her while I have the opportunity to come here and speak before you today. And then we're going to pass the baton in a few hours here when I return. So at any rate, starting my own law firm is a new experience too. Being a younger professional in an area that I did not grow up in, I'm originally from California, was a new experience, and I have found that the professional community has been exceedingly welcome. And I think what that comes down to is that wherever your passion lies, wherever your interest is, to cultivate that expertise in that area. I know it's difficult as law students, you're exposed to so many avenues, so many areas of the law that you may be attracted to. But if you can, seek out those experiences and narrow that. I practice immigration law, so talk about narrow. That is a highly specialized area of the law. But I have found that cultivating my expertise, that my male counterparts in the community look to me not as the novelty of being a female, firm owner and founder, but when they're seeking advice on immigration matters, I'm here to help. So I think that's one thing, if I could impart upon you, is to really enjoy what you do, find your passion, and develop that area of the law, because I think at the end of the day, in 2015, we're lucky enough that our profession not only matters of us being women and working women, mothers, everything in between, but also really excelling as professionals as well, and hopefully finding a good professional network that we all can fit into. Thank you.
That was a whirlwind through 40 years. We will take a short break. We're 3:45, is that okay?
We will come back at 3:40, but we could probably do 3:45.
I think 3:45, so please be back ready to talk about, we've talked about the history, now we're looking forward.